Owen provides us with an interesting read that is thought-provoking and honest as he uncovers myths in leadership. Through the lens of educational leadership, Sandra Sue, Rouge, and myself, Janine, will share our opinions and what we consider the strengths and limitations on the key concepts and myths presented in this first chapter of We Know What Leadership Is. Owen begins this chapter by stating, defining leadership is like searching for smoke signals in the fog. We all think we know what leadership is like, but when we try to agree on a common definition, we find ourselves grappling with the fog. He continues to break this myth down from 4 perspectives: common sense, practicing managers, successful leaders, and academic research. As Owen points out, all these perspectives have their flaws in defining leadership, from trying to apply misleading common sense or identifying contradictory qualities of a leader to the confusion of leadership presented in academic research that lends to anyone who can argue and show evidence of what leadership means through research. Without having a common understanding of what leadership is, it becomes difficult to judge, to discuss, or to develop leaders. Clearly, beliefs and theories about leadership aren't necessarily right. However, I believe the truth is that leadership is everyone's business. Wherever a group forms with a common purpose, the skills of leadership can be employed. So leadership being just for CEOs or administrative teams is ridiculous, and it's for anyone interacting in a group that shows effective results. In our class required text, Cotter and Rathberger suggest that good leadership depends fundamentally on the ability to build relationships, for without these, it is impossible to communicate vision and inspire others. This coincides with Owen's perspective that, if you want to lead, you have to take people where they would not have got by themselves.
We certainly agree that there is no such thing as a perfect leader. If there was, no one would be qualified. A good leader builds on their strengths, but they also build on their weaknesses. As professional educators, we are required to complete and work through a professional growth plan each year to increase our skills where we are weak. We can't rely on someone else to come into our class and do what we can't. Owen also contradicted himself in this chapter, where he expressed that leaders should work around our weaknesses, but he suggests that we also turn our weaknesses into strengths. We agree with the full 5 unicorns on this myth. Myth 3, leadership is not about your rank, title, or your position. This myth was given 5 unicorns, and we certainly agree with all of his points. The most important thing to remember is that anyone can be a leader. Throughout the various myths, Owen repeats the quote by Kissinger that states leaders take people where they would not have got by themselves. Just because you're in a position of leadership, don't be fooled into thinking that you are leading anyone. Leadership begins before the title is assigned. If you are not considered a leader by your colleagues before that title is assigned to you, there may be some distrust and raised eyebrows when you begin to work with your colleagues as their leader.
Myth 4 says that managers are leaders. When characteristics of either is identified, we see that there is some overlap, yet there is a distinct difference. We agree that managers enable great leaders to lead, and leaders can take people to places they may not have reached on their own. However, we do not feel that the challenge of management is greater than leadership. One is not more important than another. They have their own defined goals to accomplish and must work together to complement each other. In Myth 5, Joe Owen identifies that leaders know what leadership is. The good news is that leaders know exactly what leadership is. The bad news is that they all disagree with each other. Leadership is contextual. Success in one context is not necessarily success in another context. Success for one leader in an area may not be success in that area for another leader. Leadership is like a game where you do not know the rules, and the rules keep changing.
As we hear time and time again, it takes a village to raise a child. Same thing applies to leadership. To truly be a good leader in our education system, one has to build relational capacities within our schools. By building relational capacities, leaders can develop, support, and sustain effective instruction in contemporary classrooms. We see the importance of relationships in our field of education and how essential it is for leaders and all parties involved to build on those relationships, which ultimately lead to the success of our students. Costner's study looked at principals who, in collaboration with others, initiated a number number of new interaction forums. These groups or events were an important mechanism for introducing new interaction patterns into schools, as they often brought together teachers who may not have or take the time to interact with one another. By looking at the findings by Costner, it is time for leaders to become knowledgeable about cultivating collegial trust as an important capacity building strategy and seek out to build a team which brings in various talents to achieve student success. There are dramatic differences between the Asian leadership model and the leadership model developed in the West, which could be because of the disparity in two distinct cultures. Huang concluded that the Western models tend to be more charismatic and provide transformational leadership, and there is a higher concentration on motivation. The Asian leadership model prefers to maintain the harmony amongst the organization. Although two different approaches, we should remember not to assume that our way is the right way and to take into account the varying perspectives of the stakeholders we are dealing with. Take in the cultures that surround you and learn from them, keeping the communication open and being able to take the time to talk less and listen more. And finally, take in the challenges that come your way from others' perspectives.
The following are questions for our discussion on February 5th. The leader of your school or department is retiring and you are interested in the position. Would it be more beneficial to increase your leadership skills in order to be eligible for that position? Or would you feel it would be better to find a position that requires the skills you already possess? Many of our schools have a diverse population of students. As a leader, how can you help build cultural intelligence amongst your staff or colleagues? And how has the leadership you have worked with influenced your own aspirations and path? Can a negative leader influence you in a positive way? Be prepared to share an experience that resonates with you.